So in this video, I'm going to show you some in-camera edits that save time and add creative value to your hybrid films. Hey guys, it's Marlene. This video is a follow-up to my two previous videos. One is on shooting hybrid, and the next one was on editing hybrid, and this one is cinematic hybrid. Now, what do I mean by cinematic? You know, I actually don't love that term, but cinematic for me is all about the vibe. So vibe can be color, it can be energy, it can be exposure. A lot of things make the vibe of your photos and your videos. So to make things cinematic in your hybrids, you could do a vibe that has a theme running through it. So maybe you have a warm, cozy vibe, or a cool winter vibe, or a playful vibe, if you're shooting children, for example. That is, to me, parts of what makes a cinematic hybrid film. So how do you make things look cinematic? Well, there's about a handful of things that I like to use, and those are all in-camera adjustments that you can do, especially if you have a LUMIX camera, to make the vibe look cinematic. Now remember, it's all about the energy, the color tone, and things like that. And this has to do with photos as well as your video clips that you're taking for your cinematic film. First on the list is choosing a cinematic photo style. Now, if you have a LUMIX camera, there's something called Cinematic D2 on most of the recent cameras. Like, you don't even have to shoot in log and do all that color grading stuff, because that's very complicated, especially for a beginner. But if you shoot in Cinematic D2, which is on the G9 Mark II that I have and many of my other cameras, that photo style has a bit more leeway in terms of dynamic range, so that if your exposure was a bit off, you could rein it in, let's say. You could brighten your shadows, and hopefully you're already holding in your highlights, because once your highlights are gone, they're gone. So if you're shooting JPEGs, you want to do a test on that to make sure that your highlights are still in. And if they're in your JPEGs, they'll be in your video clips as well. So don't forget to check your histogram to make sure your highlights are within the range. Part of photo styles is you can actually create a custom photo style. So you can take any of the photo styles and modify it. For example, I sometimes like to shoot in Leica monochrome. And in Leica monochrome, you can change the color tone of the grayscale. So you can warm it up or cool it down. So if the vibe of your hybrid film is warm and you want to shoot it in monochrome, then you could tweak it a little bit to make it a little bit warmer. Or if it's a cool winter scene, hoarfrost on the trees, you could cool down the monochrome photo style. And you can also change the photo styles, colors, and hue and saturation of any of them. So, you know, try that too. Another thing you can do is use a custom white balance. So in white balance, they're basically measured in degrees Kelvin if you're manually setting your white balance. So a lower number, so 3000, would be considered a cool white balance if you're shooting in daylight. So if you want to cool down the scene, you lower the number in degrees Kelvin. It sounds a bit opposite to what you think it should be. And if it's daylight or a cloudy day and you raise your degrees Kelvin on your white balance, then it will make things even warmer. So it'll warm up the scene. If it's a cool day and you want to warm up the scene, like cool lighting, like a cloudy day, you would add warmth to it, and that would be raising the color temperature. And if it's if you want to cool down the scene, say if it's an overcast gray day and you want to make it even cooler, you can lower the color temperature to 4000 or 3500 or 3000. So next we're going to talk about the creative filters. And LUMIX cameras, all the ones that I own at least, have a series of creative filters in them that are kind of like you know, special effects, so to speak. Now the G9 Mark II, which I shot all of my clips on, has 8 creative filters, and my older G9 has a lot more, at least a dozen creative filters. Some of them only work with photos, so keep that in mind, and some work with photos and video. Now if you shoot RAW plus JPEG, your JPEG will have the creative filter applied, but the RAW file you can still manipulate. So if you shoot both JPEG and RAW, then you still have that RAW file if you're not sure you like that effect. So definitely test those out. Some of them are a little crazy. Some of them are, they look kind of dated. One of the ones that I used to love was Impressive Art. I overused it back in the day when I first started doing hybrid films. And you can mess around with those, but definitely test them for your photos and your video clips before landing on one that you like. I have a whole video on creative filters, so I'll link that in the video description below. Another thing you can play with is your frame rate. Now I suggest as a basic frame rate for when you're shooting your video clips, use 24 frames per second if you're in NTSC and 25 frames per second if you're in PAL. And what that does is when you're capturing video, it does make things a little more cinematic or film-like in the traditional sense. And another thing that's related to frame rate is you can actually really slow your clips down or speed them up, especially if you have an SMQ setting on your camera. SMQ stands for slow and quick mode. Even going 2 times as fast or 2 times as slow on your video can really change sort of the emotional factor of how that appears to the viewer. If you slow down your video frame rate to half speed, what happens is it kind of gets a flowy or dreamy effect. And you see this done a lot in B-roll that people shoot in their YouTube videos. They often, you know, give you sample clips and they're often a little slowed down. I don't know if you've noticed, but now you probably will notice. So look for that. Now, if you speed up your clips, they can have sort of an anxious look or even a comical look. Imagine a bunch of kids running around and tripping over their feet and things like that, and how comical it would look if it was sped up a bit. So if you have slow and quick mode on your camera, definitely play with that to see the effects you can get. Just a note of caution, if you're an autofocus only person, not all of the frame rates are autofocus depending on the camera you have. On the G9 Mark II, a lot of them are fully autofocus, but some of the older cameras you have to manually focus if you're slowing down your clips too much. Usually 2 times slower is fine. Most of those modes that I've played with are autofocus. So if that's a concern, make sure you look for that. And if you're wondering how I shot this whole presentation here, for the hybrid clips and photos, I used the G9 Mark II. I used my old 35-100 millimeter f2.8 lens and the 12-35 2.8. And I'm also using the brand new microphone, the LUMIX DMW-DMS1. And I'm shooting on the S1 Mark II, and that microphone is on the hot shoe. And I'll be talking a bit more of that in a future video, but I'm still testing it out and learning how to use it. So if my audio sucks, I apologize for that, because yeah, audio is not my thing. And I had everything dialed in so well with my Rode mics and my DJI mic, but somehow a new microphone always adds in a whole can of worms. So bear with me on that one. I hope this video has shown you some ways to do in-camera edits that save time and add creative value to your hybrid films. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if you have any more ideas to do these sort of in-camera edits. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and if you missed my 2 previous videos, you can watch those here.